return rate that investors are looking for?
Yeah, an investor common is benchmark or thresholds 5 times. So if I put $200,000 in your business, I'm looking for 5 times in 5 years, 5 to 5. Yeah, now that's in good times. Right now, we're probably going to stretch that out to 7 to 8 years. And again, it depends on this burn rate. If you're showing good break-even in the initial part, but you're showing very conservative but steady, sustainable growth out here, you don't have to capture 1% of the market, in 5 years or 10 years. If you've got a giant market out there that's made up of millions, having 1/10 of 1%, just do the math. So that's another mistake that a lot of people make in business plans. They come back and say, well, we're going to capture 2% of the market by a certain date or something like that. That's a turnoff to most investors, most people looking at it, because they're saying, how naive are you? You have a brand new product, nobody knows you, may be great, but how can you expect to get 1% or 0.5% of a big market, let's say in a 5-year period? It's not going to happen. And it doesn't have to happen because the market is so big. You just need to get a smaller part, but you need to be conservative on those forecasts. Those forecasts, don't go crazy. Err on the conservative side when you do a forecast. Okay? Any other questions? Good questions.
It's just how do you kind of? I mean, I would think that the people that are looking at these things have, for lack of a better term, a BS meter on. What are they looking for in terms of, or how do they start to determine whether or not the numbers look to be credible or they don't?
Yeah, that's another great question. I think, Mike, I'll speak for myself. There's 3 things I look at. I look at the idea, how different and unique is it? Can you prove differentiation? And that gets somewhat subjective, but if I feel that you've proved it enough to me that I feel comfortable with, I go to the next thing. And the next thing is, what's the numbers look like? What's your forecast? What's your burn rate? If the forecast is conservative, and I like the idea, that sends a signal to me that you're really starting to understand business, that you're just not writing an academic exercise saying you're going to capture the world, right? The third thing is I look at the team. If I look at the team and I don't feel that any member on that team has the background or the strength to support the numbers and support the idea, then I walk away. So the team is very, very important, very important. What you find with a lot of companies that start up, especially Silicon Valley or Austin or someplace like that, or even here, these companies will have an initial founding team. Let's say these 2 gentlemen here, they're the founders, and they're the geniuses. There's no questions. Their idea, they built the business, they're the founders. But to take them to the second stage of financing, which may be $2 million, they're not the guys. We need Mr. Welch to do it. Why? He's had 3 startups already. He's done this before, and he's got, if you will, excuse me, Mike, the gray hair that shows credibility. I'm looking at these guys fresh out of school, and they're the founders, but they need somebody that understands the business from a financial perspective and from a networking perspective. Because they know Mike is more networked than the 2 founders are. Founders will never lose their stock. But when you go to venture capital stage, for example, the founders can be reduced to the back room. They'll still maintain the stock, but they have no responsibility in running that business. They find their own people to run it. We've already jumped up to chapter 18 already. So, but is that making sense? There's kind of a brutal thing out there. So don't focus on that. Focus on starting the business to begin with, because that's what you want to do. You get off ahead of yourself, it'll be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You'll say, to hell with it, I'm not going to do it, it's too hard. So just keep it simple. Okay, innovate or perish. For pursuing a profit or non-profit, it'll not survive without innovation. The other thing you have to remember is that whatever your idea is, when you're doing your business plan, you're going to want to, I think anyway, I would suggest you show, if you will, a growth of the product. In other words, the initial product coming out may have a life cycle of 1 year, 5 years. You want to show what that life cycle is and support that life cycle with some kind of data. And then if that life cycle, let's say, is a 3-year life cycle of a piece of software, and you see a diminishing return after 3 years because you've worn out, if you will, there's going to be competition, you want to see the next phase of that product or another product coming out. Typically, they like to see the second stage be akin to the first product. So if you're going from, what is your business? business, what kind of farming was it?
Hydroponics.
Yeah, the hydroponic farming. If you're going to go from that for making components for an automobile, it would be like, wow, this is apples and oranges. But if you went from hydroponic, a certain type of farming, to another stage of a different kind of farming, or we're including fish farming in it and all those kinds of things, all that, then it's the second stage and the third stage. Okay? You don't have to be quite, and don't be aggressive on the second and the third stage. Just know that if it's there, you know that you should be presenting it in a very conservative way, but it shows planning on your side. Okay? So the investors will look and say, okay, these guys are looking way beyond the 2 or 3 years of the anticipated life cycle of what their initial product is. They're looking for sustainability. And that's what investors want to see, is sustainability. The myth of innovation or ideas is that it requires 100% creativity. It really doesn't. You don't have to be the most creative person in the world. And that's kind of, if you study Steve Jobs' life, you find that he didn't think of any of those things. Those things were things that other people thought of. But what Jobs did, he saw the application of them. And most business people are that way.